British English and American
Americans
English
are
are a version
learning
of a common
English.
16 all
I think they have
citizens
like
are
the highest
involved in it.
level of
I
diversity
am
rate.
in America,
Can you
Germany, France,
imagine?
Switzerland, Japan spy on
Okay,
each other
they all
and
do.
ourselves.
Actually, yes.
It turns out
Hi guys, good day and welcome back to the channel. So today we are actually curious. We saw this one and it says 25 misconceptions about the USA, and we are going to be checking this out. But before then, if you're new here,
Hello, how are you doing?
thank you so much for stopping by. Please do well to hit the subscribe button. It will go a long way. Give us a big thumbs up if you eventually enjoy this video, and of course leave a comment for us. So guys, without wasting much of your time, let's get right into the video.
I think so.
the United States
25
often draws a lot of flack
misconceptions.
from the rest of the world for everything. From its foreign policy to the way it
Definitely.
runs its domestic affairs. In fact, it seems like
Okay.
there are few things that can divide the world more evenly and more strongly than asking people what their opinion is of the United States. Everyone has an opinion. Even in the same city, you'll meet people who fall on the extreme sides of the spectrum. But what is it exactly that causes America to be so messed up? Even America's own politicians can't seem to stop talking about how messed up things are. Well, today we're going to take a deeper
Okay.
look. Are things really as bad as everyone seems to think they are? I'm Mike with List25, and these are 25 common misconceptions about the United States that simply aren't true. And as a very important note, this list was produced by both a United States citizen and 2 European citizens that relocated to the United States.
Oh,
It's written to be as
Makes
fair
more
as
sense
possible. No, that I'm not 2 Europeans. Or am I? All right.
okay.
Let's begin with a really common thought. Americans are ignorant about the world. Americans are held to an unrealistic standard. Since the rest of the world watch our movies and listen to our music, they know a lot about our country. But let's be honest, they
Yeah.
never studied it. People actually complain that Americans don't even know that Czechoslovakia doesn't exist anymore. But neither does half the United Kingdom, and they're on the same continent. It turns out that all of us are
Okay.
pretty bad at geography. You'd think America would be better at it, however, considering another common thought is that America spends its days spying on everyone. And that's true, but who doesn't?
Try to
Germany, France,
imagine.
Switzerland, Japan, Iceland, and all the rest of us spy
Okay,
on each other
they all
and
do.
ourselves. Moving on, America
Okay.
has been called racist. Please don't take this the wrong way. Racism definitely exists, and it makes the news. But you know what else? America also has a vicious media, and all of the world watches it, sometimes more than their own media. So when something super bad happens in other countries, it might not even make the back page. Next, it's a common misconception that Americans don't use public transport. While it's true that we use cars a lot, many regions in America have great public transport, or at least just as good as Europe. Besides, what good is a train if nobody can afford it? We're looking at you, UK. Moving on. America does /has/is fill in the blank. America is far from being a unified entity. Each state has its own laws,
Okay.
cultures, and quirks. Some
Oh,
states
wow,
have
really?
the death penalty. Some don't. Some have strict gun laws, and some don't. Some have free college.
Exactly.
Some don't. Some have tax.
Some don't.
Yeah, some
Oh.
don't. So just like you can't say
Wow.
Europe is so-and-so, you can't say the same about the US. As an additional note, the states are far
Exactly.
more independent than many of us realize. In fact, every state even has its own military, known as the Guard. Furthermore, some
wow.
states pass legislation that directly contradicts
didn't
the
know
federal
this.
government. This is because in the US, the federal government is not the highest authority, the states are. To further establish the fact that America isn't a single entity, many believe that Americans only speak one language. But that's no different from the rest of the world. Have you ever been to France? Or the UK? Or Italy? Or how about China? Most of them only speak one language too. That being said, over 20% of the US is bilingual. Now,
Oh, wow.
let's talk about the military, because people outside the US will preach that America's military does, again, fill in the blank. Nobody is naive enough to think that the US doesn't have selfish interests in mind when it invades a country. There isn't a nation on earth that would do that selflessly. But whenever the bad goes down, it's just as common for other countries to complain that America should do something. On a more or less lighter note, Americans are fat. You ever been to the UK?
It's funny.
Really? There are even scandals because obese patients are getting turned down for surgery. Yes, America does have an obesity problem.
Yeah.
But not all
They have
citizens
like
are
the highest
involved in it.
level of
I
obesity
am.
rate.
Yeah.
A big part of the United States is fairly health conscious and is consistently working to help the overweight population better their lives. Thanks, healthy people. And while we aren't perfect, many complain that America is worse than other developed nations in, well, everything. There are many statistics, child mortality, literacy, etc., where the US falls behind countries like Norway and Iceland. But those statistics are based on averages. In Norway, most of the 5 million inhabitants are rich, white, and Norwegian. If you took a similar sample of rich, white Americans in the US, you would find that the statistics are almost exactly the same. The fact is that the US is hugely diverse, and the American experience is completely different with and without money. Translation? The problem isn't healthcare or education, it's economic inequality, almost exclusively.
Yeah.
And speaking of inequality, many make the simple but powerful assumption that America just isn't safe. This is usually what foreign citizens say until they actually come here. By this same logic, Paris, Brussels, London, Madrid, and almost every other city in Europe is unsafe as well. Yes, there are guns, but most Americans have never seen or heard a gun being fired. In fact, most Swiss citizens are much more familiar with gunfire than us Americans. All this being said so far, people still expect all Americans to relish in a life of our stereotypes. Guns, fast food, and freedom! What I'm saying is, a lot of the world looks at America as overly patriotic. But here's an honest question. Have you ever met a Russian, Australian, a proud member of the UK? There's no shame in having pride in your country. Us Americans are definitely patriotic.
Exactly.
But so is the rest of the world. As they should be. It's not a crime to be proud of where you came from. But that doesn't stop others from thinking we only complain and boast about America whenever we travel abroad. This is largely anecdotal. In America, Americans like to complain just like the rest of us. Only a few of them ever even leave the country, so you're meeting an unrepresentative sample. But in their defense, many times, they're right. Yes, this can hit hard in the pride spot, but maybe Europeans could stand to smile a bit more, right? No? Okay, fine. Back to the apathetic, leave me alone face. By the way, that part was written for our European representative. By our European representative. I love all of you. Anyways, statistics viewed by outsiders show that the US is lagging behind. Similar to topics we've already discussed, there's another factor that we have to take into account. Reporting. Every nation reports its own statistics. This means that making statistical comparisons between two developed nations, like the US and the UK, is an exercise in futility. The data is just too close and won't reveal much except that the US counts people one way and the US counts them another. That still doesn't make this misconception true. Americans are fake. Here's the thing. In Europe, citizens are almost proud of the fact that they're really standoffish. But once you get to know them, they're your friend for life. Well, here's a newsflash. Once you get to know an American, they'll also be your friend for life. The thing is, though, they don't use this as an excuse to be a jerk in the beginning. This list sounds great coming from an American. I was totally the one who should have read this one, but I digress. On a totally different but very popular misconception, Americans are the only ones who call football soccer. Actually, a lot of the world calls it soccer. Even parts of Ireland still call it soccer. Oh, what do I mean by still?
Oh, really?
I'm glad you asked. It was actually the British who coined the term soccer. The word soccer is an abbreviation of association, and first appeared in universities in the 1880s, sometime using the variant spelled soccer with a K. The word is sometimes credited to Charles Redford Brown, an Oxford University student said to have been fond of shortened forms such as brekkers for breakfast and rugger for rugby football. Britain actually started using the word football in the late 20th century, possibly because people incorrectly saw it as an Americanism. This next one, Tristan couldn't believe. Could you not?
No.
I'm learning something. To our American viewers, did you know that people in Europe make fun of you for using air conditioning? Why do they need it? Why don't they just leave the window open? Mosquitoes, at least in Florida. But here's why they might be joining us soon. During the 2003 European heatwave, 70,000 people died. This was in large part due to the fact that European homes and buildings are not typically equipped with air conditioning. While they laugh at the Americans for this, hotter summers are going to force them to take appropriate measures. Especially since children and the elderly are very
Everyone
susceptible.
else uses air conditioner.
Again, I stand by mosquitoes. I'm not opening my window in the summer. Winter, absolutely. Open windows.
Yeah.
Moving into the top 9. That's a weird number. Top 9. Many parts of the world accuse the United States of accounting for 25% of the world's carbon emissions. Not so nice. But it also accounts for 25% of the world's economic activity. The truth is that several nations, including countries like Canada, have higher per capita emissions than the US. Next, let's talk about how the world thinks Americans are ruining English. Actually, both British English and American
Americans
English
are
are
ruining
from a common
English.
16th century ancestral standard, and in some ways, American
But
English is
look, for this one, I feel like it's true. Because American English is kind of like not correct. I don't know.
We use the British English.
In Nigeria, maybe that's
Yes.
why.
So yes.
When an American speaks, I'm like,
Yes, especially when it comes to also writing. we
yeah,
believe-
like
Yes. Theirs is like wrong.
different, yeah.
Yes. different
It's
from-
wrong, but like, is it wrong to us because we use British English, or is it wrong?
I don't think
because
it's
actually
wrong. I don't think it's wrong generally.
And when they speak too, they have like a lot of, is it slangs? You know, the English is.
I feel like the
just not
British
correct.
people have more slangs than the US people.
I doubt. No,
Yes.
look, the Americans, like, are you trying to hurt me? Are you trying to hurt me? You know, there's just a lot of
Are you joking? The British people actually have more slangs though.
like how can
They
you give me
have,
an
like,
instance?
Things like in it and very, very
No, it's classy. It's like they are speaking correct English. They are pronouncing the words well. But Americans just like to abbreviate. So in a way, I agree to this one that they're speaking English because
I'm not like 100%.
yeah, I'm
not
just
agree
joking. But like
yes.
in a way, I've thought about it before. Like,
Yeah.
why do Americans speak this way? Like, that's not English. Like, what are you saying? Why are you saying this? Why are you talking like this? So yeah, let's just continue.
closer to the original than British English. For example, American English has, for the most part, retained the language's rotosity, pronunciation of the R in words like hard, while British has, for the most part, dropped it. Furthermore, this shift in British English happened around the time of the American Revolution when wealthier Londoners wanted to distinguish themselves from the lower classes. This is only one example, but it goes to show
really?
that British English is not an unchanging standard any more than American English. On a totally different note,
Oh,
did
I
you know
see.
that Americans don't all live in the suburbs? Nope, not true. The fact is that
But
in
who
America,
thinks
you
so?
have plenty of people that live in cities like New York, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, and the list goes on. In fact, several regions of the United States are very European, like the Northeast Corridor, for example. The difference between the U.S. and Europe is
Wow,
that if you want to live in the suburbs in the U.S., you can, but you don't have to. Now, this next one is
Oh.
just offensive. Americans are all dumb rednecks. While there are certainly Americans who
Who
fit
thinks
this stereotype,
so?
the vast majority don't. Most Americans live in cities near the coasts. Most of them are educated, and most of them are not very different from
exactly.
Europeans in any significant way. Every country has a less educated populace that they themselves make fun of. Even sophisticated nations like Sweden and Switzerland. Fair warning, the last 5 on our list get a bit dark and crazy, starting with the idea that America is imperialistic. In many parts of Europe, the United States is seen as an aggressive imperial power, even more so than Russia and China.
No.
This is largely because our military presence both in Europe and everywhere else. But in our strong defense, Americans never forced you to watch our movies, quarter our soldiers, obey our laws, or get permission to leave your own countries. It was the Russians that did that, and much,
They
much
never
more.
forced you to watch.
Food for thought, after World War II, the Americans liberated and left. The Russians liberated and stayed. All right, number 4 is sure to be a shocker to a lot of foreigners. Americans don't actually all walk around with guns. It's just not true. Except for a few places, the only people you'll ever
I
see
know they
carrying
don't.
guns in America are the police. In fact, you'll see more people walking around with guns in
Really?
Switzerland than you ever would in America. Okay.
What? Is
we
that
admit
true?
that, like most stereotypes.
Gun is actually legal in Switzerland.
I didn't know about that.
I also didn't know about that. This is my first time of hearing it.
I actually thought like people walk around with guns more in the US.
In
than
the US, yes,
exactly.
like for self-defense,
Yes.
because like there's one crime or the other going on out there.
and all.
But maybe, as he said, maybe it's just misconception. Maybe people just try to push
True.
the negative narrative to
Yeah.
the media for other people to see and be like, oh, everybody in the US is toxic and they all walk around with guns.
Yes, exactly.
Imagine they use guns are legal in Switzerland and we never even know this. But for America, we know the worst. We know everything. So
Exactly.
it's just crazy. Let's continue.
There is some truth to this next one, but it's been wildly blown out of proportion. Americans are all crazy Christian right-wingers. There's something so right about saying it with that accent. Yes, there are a lot of Christians in America, and while some of them are crazy right-wingers,
Yeah, exactly.
most of them aren't. In fact, if you ever get a chance to go and stay with one of those crazy Christian families, you'll see that most of them are just genuinely sweet people that go to church on Sundays.
Exactly.
This next one sounds like a legit stand-up joke. If you get injured and can't pay for it, you'll just die in the street. Yeah, many people in Europe think this is what happens in America.
Who thinks
As with
that?
most things that concern America,
I doubt.
they're wrong.
I doubt anyone would
You
think
can't be
so.
denied emergency medical care in the U.S. That would go against the Hippocratic Oath.
Yeah.
The difference is that you get a bill in the mail a few months later. Of course, debt is another issue, but let's get into that right now. Americans are all in debt. Actually, European citizens carry more debt than Americans. The average household debt in the US,
In
OECD,
debt.
is 113% of the household's income. In the UK, it's 156%. In Sweden, 173%.
Oh, wow.
And in Denmark, it's a whopping 305%. So, what are some misconceptions about the US that you'd like cleared up? Or do you live in America and want to put a stereotype to rest? Let us know in the comments below.
No,
or tweet
we
your
don't
answer to
live
us
in
at
America.
And as an American, I
okay. So
apologize
that's it
for
about
everything.
this particular one. Misconception.
Yeah.
I don't think they all live in debt, but like there's a way the system works.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, I had a conversation with somebody who is from the US and stays there, and this person has been paying for a house for almost 20-something years. And she's like, I'm paying. I'm like, why don't you just buy the house outright? Like,
Exactly.
why do you have to pay so much and then there's taxes, and then when the new government come, the rate of the house might actually like increase. You know, it's just a lot. In some way, I feel like they are always in debt.
Definitely.
In some way, because you buy your car, you have to pay for it for the rest of your life. You rent, you go to school, you get a loan, you have to pay. It's just like one debt or the other. You're paying for this and the other. But over here,
You
I
literally
mean,
have to earn money to pay
buy,
for that
yeah,
thing
what
at
you
that
want
moment.
outright,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
you don't have to be in debt, like start paying for the
Yes.
rest of your life.
It's,
feel
I
like-
think recently the government made it possible for students to take up loan.
in Nigeria,
Yes,
right?
in Nigeria recently, and it's
Yes,
loan.
and pay later.
Yes, and pay
But
later.
before now, there was nothing like that here. So I feel like
Yes.
this has advantage and disadvantages.
Definitely does.
Yeah, getting the loan, getting access to these things, being able to live in the moment. For instance, you want a 2024 car, you go
Yeah.
pick it up and you get to pay. Instead of you saying you want to save for it, and then
Exactly.
when you're able to afford it, the 2024 car is already outdated. You're already in 2027.
Exactly.
You're able to get it. But in
But
a
you're
case where
not-
you're living in a country where you get to buy it outright, at least you
Yes.
buy it and you take your mind off.
Exactly.
You're not owing anybody. Imagine paying for one house for 30 years and maybe you don't finish paying it,
That is a
and
very long time. to
life
pay the
happens
debt.
and you just go
Exactly.
and somebody else
I
inherits
think
the debt.
I think in cases like that, they just let go of the debt.
It's
Yes,
just crazy.
I read it somewhere where when you're owing a debt and then the person dies, they just let go of the debt.
I don't know. That's something
think
we'd
so,
like to
yeah.
be clarified. Even from the US, how does it work? For instance, you're mortgaging a home and maybe it's 25 years and you've paid for 21 years and then you go. And then, I mean death. Then somebody else, maybe your child, has to inherit this debt, or how does it really work? Because I don't want to pay for something for the rest of my life. I want to have money and buy it. And buy it
Right
once and
there,
for all.
exactly.
Yeah, I don't want to go
But
through
I
that
think
stress.
I think the advantage, another advantage of this whole debt thing, there are times when you really need something and
you're
do,
unable
yes, exactly.
to afford it. For
Like
instance, the
education,
car.
for example.
Yeah, and education as well. Very
You can't
important.
afford. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, it helps. It's just, but it's good that these misconceptions are clarified.
Yes.
Like most of them were not shocked as me. I'm like, who thinks this way? Who thinks
Exactly.
Americans are all fat? Who thinks? But the language, and I won't lie, I've actually thought about it, that why do Americans speak this way? Is this the correct English? But like, so that's it about this video. Thank you all so much for watching it with us. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did filming it. Please do leave your comments below. Let us know what you think. And please do also hit the subscribe button. If you're not already subscribed, to go a long way. Give us a big thumbs up. If you enjoyed our reaction, share it with your friends and loved ones, so we can support the channel. Thank you so much. You can also support the channel by buying us a coffee. It's linked in the description box below. Thank you. God bless you. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you all on our next video. Bye.